Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another exciting Vobes One-Eyed Kenobi Showbie with me, Richard Vobes, on the 22nd of March 2020. Hold on to your table. Make sure there's nothing falling off the shelves. Is your house still standing? We go to Croatia today to find out what happens in an earthquake. Yes, we have the Andrew Norris moment, and I can tell you, he sent it pretty swiftly to me to play into the show. That's coming up. Elaine Brazier is out on the seaside filming those people and asking, are they really 2 meters away from each other? We'll get that report coming up in today's show. Linda Kane has some questions for us to answer, some Round Britain quiz cryptic questions. But the question is, can you solve them? That's all in today's show. Plus your conversation. What do you want to talk about? And are you surviving? That's the question I want to know. Or did you go out and see your mum? Happy Mother's Day to all of you. I'm afraid my mum is up there in the clouds, probably laughing her socks off at the plight that we're in at the moment, because she probably would have found the funny side of it. But let's find out who's out there in the Vobosphere and see who we've got. The lovely Julia is out there first, eager to get into the action. And Ernie is right on her tail. Hello, tally-ho, he says. Richard and Julia, enjoy your break next week. Thank you very much. Philip Hammonds is out there, says good evening. Francesco Boing is also out there. Nice to see you. Ed Loud, good evening. The Veg Grower podcast is out there. Sorry I missed your show today. Was running around a little bit trying to sort a few things out, but I'm sure it was a good one. Linda Kane says, hello, everyone. Hope all okay. That's it. We've got to count up and make sure we've still got everybody, really. And welcome all the new people along who may be interested in seeing the show. Les Jarvis is here. Andrew Norris, what ho, Vopesters. Great to see that you are in one piece, Andrew. We had a bit of a shock this morning when the news started filtering in that all of Croatia had disappeared. Vroom, like that. All of you hanging on by your fingernails to the edge of the soil as it was crumbling away, and we could hear the as people were disappearing down the great big cracks that had opened up. But glad that you are one of the many survivors out there. Judith is there. Hello to Judith. Andy Stacey, Mike Dixon, lovely to see you. Thank you for passing by. Barry Stevens, how are you, mate? It's nice to... Oh, and Fade, is it Faden? Faden, is that how you pronounce it? Andy Frierson, hello to you. Anne Osborne, hello Anne, lovely to see you. Glad you're okay. Wendy Laurie, nice to see you. Miss K Crazy's Adventures, good evening to you, Miss K. Hope you are all good. And Andrew Murphy, hello to you, which is marvellous. Ray Ballinger says good evening. Good evening, Ray. Andrew Murphy, he's still with us, which after his dunking, that's great. Vedgrower Problem says, no problem, we had a great show. I'm sure you did. I wish I had tuned in, actually, but I was sorting out Miss Smalls for my trip away. Francisco Bellringer, unfortunately, Jeff Marshall and Vicky Pipe are live on the all stations. What do you mean, unfortunately? They don't go live a lot, so I'm going to watch that. I don't know why you bother. Why do you bother to come in? You do this quite a lot, which is one reason you got kicked out before. Nobody comes in. What a weird thing to do. Nobody comes in and says, I don't think I'm going to watch you. There's this other thing on the other channel. Nobody does that. That's very rude. Consider yourself booted, mate. Nobody wants to hear that. You put yourself in my position. There you are doing a show, and then some people come and say, we're not going to watch you, mate. There's some other better people on the other side of the universe. Great. You won't be welcome next time. You know, when you say those things, you won't. You put me in a mood now. You don't want to put me in a mood. I can tell you. Somebody else tell him that he's being an idiot. Ian Beddoes, hello to you. Here we are. He's a lovely one. Hello, Vobie One-Eyed Kenobi. And Kathy Owens, hope you're doing well. Ella on the lockdown. Yes, we're doing our best, although down here on the seaside, where I live, because the world and his brother has been visiting the seaside. which of course is slightly upset Boris Johnson because they're all coming out of London, which is the hotbed for the coronavirus, and they're coming right down to the seaside. So, don't kiss me quick hats at the moment, because you might catch something if you kiss it. Leslie Couch says, good evening, Richard. Good evening to you. Nice to see you. Barry Stevens says, it's Faden, and you're the one of the few to pronounce it right. Oh, thank you. Faden is my son. I am sharing your shows. Oh, what a lovely man you are. Thank you so much, Barry. Lewis Herbalist, Kim is there. Evening all. Made it after a week of madness. Yes, I bet you did. Thanks, Kim, for posting your kind offer on the Bald Explorer page, by the way. And if anyone hasn't seen that, do check it out. That would be absolutely, that would be great. Kathy Owen says, no better people than you. Ah, that's very nice. Marriott Genealogy says, hello, at 6:35 in a windy Adelaide, starting the day 5 of quarantine. No symptoms here till the 2nd of April. State borders closed 4 p.m. on Tuesday. Good luck. Good luck with that. Andrew says hi to Kim, which is nice. Because they know each other. They go back to university days, don't you know? Hello, 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 says Mr. Sadler. Nice to see you too. And Audrey Forbes Hamilton, good evening. It seems like we have a full complement. But I dare say others will join us. And if I have missed you out, I do apologise. But thank you so much for coming along. So what do you make of this? What do you make of these people who have seen the sun and have gone, do you know what? I know we were all quite happy to stay at home and not go to work whilst it was miserable. But now that the sun is shining and it's warm outside and it's costing us to heat the house, why don't we go out? Why don't we go down to the beach? Nobody will be there, only to find the world and his brother is down at the beach. What do you make of that out there in the Vobosphere? It's a strange thing. And I heard on the news, they were very, very, on the BBC News, very sort of... what's the word I'm looking for when somebody tells you off? Very stern and very telling you what. What's a good word for that when somebody is really telling you off and putting you down? Somebody give me a good word for that. One of the wordsmiths out there. Very, very and cross at the same time. Cross as if we were little students. Not we, I mean people were students who were disobeying, pupils, like naughty children who were disobeying, and the tone of the news was whatever this word could be, thinking that they're going, yay, we're down on a beach, we're going to be all right because you can't get corona. It's not like, I suppose they think that coronavirus doesn't wash up on the seashore in the foam. Which I presume they're right. It probably doesn't wash up in the foam, and they paddle out into the water and a stingray comes up, nips them there, and it's actually carrying a bit of corona itself. Admonishing, that's a good word. Thank you very much, Judith. Yes, admonishing. Mickey Stevens is there. We all need to help each other out. I've noticed... Oh, hang on a minute. I've noticed, what did you say, motorhomes along the seafront today, says Judith. Yeah, you see, this is... it's a grey area, isn't it? You've got to self-isolate, fair enough. Motorhome, stay at home, stay indoors, stay up there. You've got to... is that staying indoors? Is that... if you're in a... Even if you're in a car, if you don't come out the car... Are you self-isolating? How much can you go into the community, or not the community, how much can you go into the world, but still be in a bubble, like in a car or a motorhome, in your own unit, and not pass it on? I mean, to lock people up does seem incredibly unfair, even though there is a virus. But I'd be interested in your thoughts. What do you see? Let me know. Kevin Smith, good evening. Nice to see you. Good evening, he says. Hope you're keeping safe and well. We're doing our absolute best to do so. There are no words. They're filling up Cornwall, says Linda Kane. That has only one hospital. Yes, well, I'm supposed to be going down to see Mark. I've booked an Airbnb to go and see Mark Selwood, but I can't remember when that is. I think it's in March or June, but most likely I'll have to cancel that because obviously the Cornish only got one hospital, and there's only one road in and one road out, so probably not a good idea. Strict, yes, they're being very strict, but the admonishing is a better way. They are with an admonishing tone, as if, yes, thanks. Audrey also says the same, admonishing. Chastising, says Linda Kane. That's a good word. Yes, berating. That's another good word. Yes, berating. It's like we're not doing as we're told, or we're finding, a motorhome on the seafront. You're still indoors, but you're not. You're on the. It's like, oh, you found the loophole, and that's and the teachers are going, or the BBC, or the government, and Boris is going, damn it, we didn't think of that, did we? And this is the British spirit going 100%, thinking, well, they didn't say that, did they? Didn't say we couldn't do that. Where in Sussex says, here we go. My theory, wait for it. My theory on it is the government told people it was okay to do exercise in open spaces and parks, which was specifically mentioned. So everyone took it upon them, and bang. And that's true. I think, in essence, it's not a bad notion to say that people should be able to go for a walk if they're on their own, or with people in their little nucleus who they're already together with, and exercise in parks. And, of course, everyone's gone at the same time, because it's like, yeah, we can. But in time, they will not all go out at the same time. Those that like going out will go out, but generally, the people who are not used to going out will go, well, I've been out in the sunshine. This is the usual time I go out in the sunshine, one day a year. The rest of the time I'll get back in front of the Xbox. So I don't think there will be this mad rush down to the beach all the time. Although the beach, maybe, perhaps they'll start putting barbed wire under the sand or something. Ian Beddoes says, 60 miles from the beach, so went to the garden centre instead. Oh my goodness, are you allowed in the garden centre? I suppose if you stay far enough away with the plants around you. Maybe they've got triffids in the garden centre to ensure that if you meet somebody else and you start talking and you get within your 6 feet, the triffid just squirts you with the yellow poison, and that's it, you're dead. Mark Donny McLeod, how are you, sir? Hello, he says. How are you? Are you surviving? Kim says, have family in London, Paris, Brussels, a friend in Italy and in Spain. Blimey, you've got good contacts. Little do we know what is heading our way. Lockdown is on its way because of ignorance. Lockdown is on its way because of ignorance. Could you explain what you mean by that, Kim? Lockdown is on its way because of ignorance. What do you mean? I need that to be unpacked. Ron Langley says, hi, Richard. First time on here. Ron, it's very nice to see you. Well done for coming. Thank you so much. It's lovely to see you, Ron. And well done for managing to work out how it happens. Ed Loud is saying that... where's he gone? It jumped. It jolly well jumped. Hang on, Ed. Here we go. I'm avoiding beaches and all gatherings as much as possible. Well, that's a very wise thing to do, as my chest is already very weak and I have breathing troubles after catching the infection that killed Grandad. The doctors can't cure it. Blimey. Well, I think that's a sensible thing. But for anybody, not, if people are on the beach, don't go on the beach. But if you've got a deserted beach, I don't see anything wrong with that. You've got to have this huge distance between you. Robert Brailsford says, I heard that idiots flocked to the prom at Weston-super-Mare today. I don't know what they were thinking, whether they thought they would be the only ones. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe they just think, well, everyone's been told to go inside, so it'll be okay if we go out. So maybe that's what it is. Welcome to you, Ron, says Ian Beddoes. Scolding. Yes, scolding. That's another good. Fantastic. You wordsmiths out there. Thank you for that. Admonishing, scolding, berating. Superb selection of words. Mickey Stevens says Treliski and Churro, I think. Is that where the hospital is? Linda Kane says, lots are not doing the right thing, though. Yes, this is the thing. If the idiots will make those that are trying to be with social distance and correct ways of doing it, they're going to enforce the government to take a more martial law approach, which is not going to be good for anyone. Because unless you can actually let people out, I mean, you've got to let people out. Just, excuse me, bit of corona there. If you don't let people out, they are going to go stark raving mad. And I can't help thinking of the arguments that are going to happen, the abuse to children that is going to happen, people in close proximity. It is not a natural thing. And when you think of ancient man, they weren't ancient man roving around the landscape. They weren't in brick huts with doors and solid windows. They were out in the open, in the elements, and they had space to get around. If we were back in the day that didn't have the wireless, the radio, Wi-Fi, smartphones, you know, a proclamation might be made in the market square, and we'd all go and listen and go, oh yeah, stay indoors till hear notice, yeah, whatever. And then the proclamators and the law enforcers would be thin on the ground, and yet people would still just go down to the pub. And it's a very difficult thing because we are now too clever by half the time. Sorry, I'm castigating. That's a great word. Thank you very much. This is really good. Philip says, and thank you for your phone call today, Philip. Sorry, I was just a bit in the middle of lighting the Essie, so I wasn't very communicative when you called me. He says, a joke I saw. The government told me to wear a mask and an eye... Sorry, let me read that again. The government told me to wear a mask and eye protection when I go out. They lied. Everyone else was wearing clothes. Yeah, right. Nice. Mike Dixon says, my brother-in-law is a doctor in Lincolnshire where the situation is apparently dreadful with so many people needing hospital admission and being very seriously ill. Oh, my goodness. Thanks for that. I mean, you know, the thing is, you hear these stories and they are a worry, but after a while it becomes a bit every day, doesn't it? It becomes a bit every day, and as somebody said, you know, it won't happen to me. It's always going to happen to somebody else. I mean, I'm half expecting to get the coronavirus the moment I walk into a supermarket and put my hand on a trolley or pick up a basket or put my pin in or any of those things. I'm expecting to get it very quickly. And then what do you do when you need to go and get some food? Judith says some locals are complaining that people are coming down from London spreading their germs. That's probably true. Mark says it's a shame that the government have to press the point, have to press the point, and that we aren't, and because the people in many instances don't have the brains that they were born with. Well, I think that's very indicative of the day we are in, isn't it? That people are so used to being told things. If you turned it into a bit of a game that people were rewarded, if people were rewarded with little things that got the endorphins, if you stay inside for another day, you get another little sticker on your phone, think how many people would actually probably do that. You know, I think you have to nudge people rather than tell them. Make it look like it's their idea. Linda says lockdown is the only answer. There are always those who will think that they are okay to do what they want. Well, I don't know. I mean, I understand the principle of lockdown, but I just think what that means. Lockdown for us, maybe in the southeast, is quite nice in the rural countryside, in our houses and our gardens. But what about people in high-rise flats? What about people who've got neighbours who are abusive and loud and not very nice? What about people on council estates who are walled up and there's people going rogue? What about, you know, there's a lot of people in very difficult situations if you lock them up or ask them to stay inside. And I don't think it's very healthy for them. I think there'll be deaths. I think there'll be murders. I think there'll be people being hit in anger, domestic abuse. I think there'll be a lot of that going on. I'm not saying I know the answer. I'm just saying if you don't let people out, the big problem that I see is that we've funneled people into towns and cities. We've got them out of the countryside. And once they're all in such high numbers, it's, what do you do when you've got this virus and you're saying everybody's got to stay inside? They're too close together and they're just going to get on top of each other. The people in the countryside who've got nice cottages and gardens and things, they're all fine, aren't they? They're going to be great. Oh, well, whatever, I'll just go and tend the roses. I don't think it's as easy as just locking people up, because I think people will just, A, how do you police it? And B, I just don't think it's going to work. I think you've got to give people a certain amount of freedom, or a supposed freedom, to make them think they're being responsible, but they've still got to be responsible. I mean, they've still got to keep their social distance and stuff. I don't know what the answer is. I've never been in this situation myself, so I think it's a very tricky thing. Not sure it's ignorance. I mean, no, that some of them are blatantly doing these things. I absolutely agree. Mr. Great Plum says hello, Matthew. Nice to see you, by the way. The government have to take into account the people's physical and mental health, and that's why it's not been a lockdown. Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. He says, my wife is a children's social worker, and they're braced for utter horror, frankly, to the vulnerable kids being shut inside. Yeah, I mean, if you've got an autistic child, or a child with mental health issues, and he or she kicks off, and taking them to the park to feed the ducks is something that looked after them, or it doesn't have to be a kid; it could be anybody. You need these things to calm people down. Kim says, I think they won't get ill. I think they all won't get ill, and if they do, the NHS will fix it. Oh, I see what you mean. Yes. Well, remember, most of these people who will be reasonably fit won't be necessarily hospital admissions. I mean, I think that's the thing that we do. It's not like everybody who gets this flu is going to need to go to hospital. Many won't need to. And I think this is where we're getting this a bit out of proportion. I don't know. But from the few doctors and people that I've seen on YouTube, it's clear that not everyone is going to need to go in, but obviously that a lot will. And not everybody who goes into hospital is going to die. They may, hopefully most of them will recover. So it's very difficult. Linda Kane says lockdown is very last resort, but all the time there are people not complying. We will all have to accept the consequences. It's the thing is, people just won't unless you put them in prison and there's somebody outside the door. People would just won't comply with it. And I think you'll be making there'll be fights. There'll be fights. People will spit at people, and there'll be spite, and it will bring out the worst of the worst people. And it's those worst people, we can't lock them up. We don't know where they are. AB says the situation around New York is very dire. Mayor and governor say that in the 4 to 6 days, the intensive care units will be overwhelmed. Stay inside and flatten the curve. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, if you could see this thing, I think you would stay inside. If you saw people dropping down on the ground, withering, like having the Black Death, I think people would comply. It's because you can't see it, they don't think it is as dangerous as it could be. Staff at the Royal Hospital, says Mike Dixon, in Brighton are apparently exhausted, and many people are waiting for admission. And this is the trouble. If the nurses and doctors are exhausted, then the quality of care is going to go down, and that will add to the issue. Has anyone else noticed more idiots on the road this time too, says the Veg Grower podcast. Nigel says, convert the empty schools into cottage isolation hospitals, clear the hospitals of all other ailments, accidents, heart and attacks. Making space, I think, is a very good idea. Judith says, yes, Richard, lots of cars out and about. I wondered where they're all going. More impatient drivers today. Mr. Biggs says, heard from Worthing Council that they're converting the pavilion into a temporary mortuary. My God. Ron Langley says, I used to work for the NHS and I know the pressure of the staff is put through on a normal winter without having coronavirus going around. Philip Hammond says, you're right, Richard. Clearer roads, everyone driving... Richard S., clearer roads, everyone driving faster. Mr. Great Plum says, very few empty schools. Most will reopen tomorrow with some kids in them. I mean, after a while, this freedom... It's because we've been told... I mean, I may be wrong, but I think when you tell everyone to lock down, they've had a week of that. They've had a week inside. The sun's come out and they've all gone a bit mad and they've all come out. I think once you've had this spike of, schools out, running around, driving fast and all of that, if you clamp down, they will continue to do that behaviour. I'm sure that there must be studies that people have studied that if you do this and don't let people have enough freedom, they will flout it and go mad. Whereas, this spike after the weekend, perhaps tomorrow people will settle down a bit and more people will be back at work. Some people won't be. They'll be trying to work out how to get the dole or whatever it is, or how to get paid from their business or whatever they do. Perhaps that will... it may be that you have to ration petrol so that people can't go too far and drive madly. People, trains, you may have to have special tickets to say who you are on the trains. There may be all these measures that the government are thinking about so that people can't. It's difficult because you can't really see the problem. Yes, that's right. Mickey Stevens says the invisible menace. I'm sure the ones not complying don't have vulnerable friends or family. Well, I don't know that that's true. I mean, I think they do. I just think they're probably just thinking it's not going to happen to them, and it will, they will find somebody, but it'll be too late. Where in Sussex says everyone who doesn't comply is doing it because in their mind they are important enough not to have to. And that's true, but as people often say, it's a very easy way to... That's a very easy thing to say. And on the face of it, I think that sounds right. But at the same time, I think you have to play the psychological game. You have to use a bit of psychiatry here. You have to play with people's minds and make them want to comply rather than tell them to. And I think that's what we're probably learning and seeing. I don't know. I'm sure the ones compliant have... Yeah, exactly. Kim says it is the exponential viral spread that's the issue. One person not staying in can silently be passing it on. The NHS will break. There are not enough staff to deal with it. It seems to me that the NHS will break anyway. And I that's not me condoning people coming out, of course, but it just seems to me that that is a conclusion that I think many have already got the horror of. Obviously, we don't want that to go into a nightmare scenario. Philip Hammond, cheerful, isn't it? Yeah. Now, well, we've never been in this situation, have we, where we've worried this much, and so easily. This is like sitting in the pub. Perhaps at the beginning of the Second World War, when you could see that Hitler and his armies were over in Europe, and you're waiting for something to happen. I don't know how many people of you know somebody who's actually got this or has died from it. Perhaps very few of you. Maybe some of you know somebody who's got it or is self-isolated and stuff. But I can imagine this being a conversation that people would have had in a pub, seeing the German might or hearing about it from the news and worrying about it. It's not yet happened, but we know it's going to happen. And it's that sort of lull before the storm. Sharifa, my son's girlfriend, works in the hospital. They've got patients in there, few patients with coronavirus, not many. And she says it's very eerie at the moment. It's quite quiet and it's very eerie. And she says it does feel like the lull before the storm. They're gearing up like mad. They don't have all the equipment. They're doing the very best they can. And the strain is rather a lot. Barry Stevens says, yes, I saw many people driving. Idiots. They caught up with COVID. Lots of motorbikes racing fast and doing wheelies. Yeah, well, you know, you want those people to fall off their motorbikes and have terrible, painful accidents to their arm, break their arms and legs, and the hospital say, sorry, mate, we're a bit busy at the moment. Didn't you think about that before you went out on your bike? Probably people out and about more as it's Mother's Day. Yeah, I just think people have come out because it's the sunshine, it's Mother's Day, it's the weekend. We've had this first week of shock. People have, they just need to do that. I think it will settle down. I don't think you need to clamp them up. I think it will settle down. There'll always be the idiots, of course, but I think it will settle down. Does everyone think that warmer weather will help to reduce the virus? Well, I don't know. It's the warmer weather that's the thing, is it? It's the fact that the other flus are not around, so not so many people are being affected by that or going to the hospital. That's what I think. We've been talking about people going down to the seaside. Let's go and see what Elaine Brazier has been up to. She went out in her car and she just set the camera up and did one bit of filming, and then she went back home. She didn't get out of the car, so she wanted me to reassure everybody that she wasn't there just filming everyone in amongst the melee, but she could see that people were coming down to the coast and she thought it was worth reporting. So this is from Elaine Brazier down at St Margaret's Bay in Kent. Tomorrow is a bright new day. Thanks, Elaine. Interesting to see people. It's almost like an ordinary day. An ordinary day of people going about their business. And on one level, I suppose it's quite nice to see that people aren't panicking in the street. That people aren't... Do you remember the London scenes when we saw the London... What do they call that in South London? There were the riots, the London riots, when people were smashing windows and going... We haven't seen that level of violence yet. People are taking it in their stride. And I absolutely appreciate that what they're possibly doing is putting the vulnerable people at risk. I completely understand that. But at the same time... There is a sense, certainly from those pictures, and I'm sure most people have gone there, if they've gone out at all, without malice, and have not gone out there to deliberately to flaunt, as it were, but to stay safe as much as... I'm sure most people have gone out there. They just want to have something to come back in so they can then barricade themselves back for a week. And it would be, I mean, admittedly, they, coming out on one day, it's probably because it's Mother's Day and they're just trying to get out. on one level, it's nice to see that people aren't panicking as such. And of course, yes, you've got the idiots going around. It's fascinating to watch human nature. Ed Loud says, and sorry, I'm not going to get a chance to read all the comments. Of course, this is absolutely amazing, a level of communication here, but obviously, hopefully you can. But Ed Loud says, all this talk of key workers too, just what is a key worker? Surely shelf stackers and the people providing food are amongst the most key people in society right now. Well done to them all. And this is a level of... I suppose a tier of what you would call key workers who are doing key jobs, obviously doctors and the emergency services and those sort of things. But other key workers, I think Steve Pilfold described him as a key worker, and school teachers would be key workers because they're teaching the children of nurses and doctors and people like that. But as you say, people who are putting the food and risking their lives by sitting at the tills as people put their stuff on the till. And I was in a supermarket today, and was in the queue, and you saw the till person sitting at the conveyor belt. People have taking their stuff out their trolley, which they've touched with their hands, putting it on the belt, and it goes past, and the person on the till is picking it up, as we know, going, peep, peep. It's not them peeping inside it. That's the bleep, isn't it? It's a bleeping noise. And how many times, without thinking, on a 2-hour shift or however long they have to sit there, are they going to just scratch their face or, do something without even thinking? They haven't got gloves on. They're just sitting there doing this. Obviously, there's not enough self-service things so that people can, almost not touch anything other than the products they've picked up. If you're able to pick the product off the shelf, but because someone's put it on the shelf, so they're risking their lives. And of course, if you're in the queue waiting behind somebody, you're risking your life as well. And in fact, I would argue that you're probably more at risk in the supermarket than you are out on the beach. I don't know what you think about that. Cashiers in Asda were wearing gloves. Oh, well, that's good. As long as, again, they don't accidentally touch themselves. I guess if you're wearing a glove, you're going to be more aware and you probably won't touch yourself. But you only want somebody to inadvertently, someone's behind them. Oh, sorry, mate. And not doing it into their elbow or into a hanky. Andrew Norris says, nice, Elaine. That was quite optimistic. I noticed everyone was walking from left to right. They were all heading in the same place. Or were they all heading in the same place? Great vid. Could watch and listen to the waves for hours. Hopefully, that was Merit Genealogy. Ed says, hopefully, after all this, society will have a lot more respect for the humble shelf stacker. Well, let's hope so. Let's hope so. After 5 days locked up, I think I'm going crazy. I want to go out, up on the moors or a remote beach, camping alone, and come back when it's all over, says Mark Donny McLeod. And this is the thing. There's, some people just being inside is torment, and we're not geared up for this. I made a point of thanking the lady on the till at the supermarket on Friday. Well done. No, this is it. People are, they're doing this. But of course, the thing that we've still got to remember, it isn't the Black Death. Yes, it means that a small portion of the vulnerable are possibly going to die. But the majority of us will have just really bad flu or worse than flu. Some of us will end up in hospital and come out again, and some won't come out, or we might come out in a box or a bag or whatever it is. But again, the media does make you feel like we are living through the plague, but maybe that's just me. You need to get, yes, but then David Hawkins said, but you need to go out and get food essentials at some time. Exactly, and is that enough? I mean, for me, it's very easy because Morrison's is right behind my house. So it's very easy to nip in there and come back. I don't have to buy a lot. But it means, of course, then I do that trip perhaps every other day instead of once a week. Kim says, I understand the shop staff are key workers. I've been helping with herbs for local staff. They're also stressed. They've also told that 40% of them will get it. Yeah, but presumably the ones that are working are not the vulnerable. Presumably the ones who are able to do this, that you would think that in a supermarket situation, the manager would say, look, okay, is any of you, if you get this, are you going to be are you on the critical list? Are you vulnerable? If you are strong, then you can work, and 40% of you might get this. And as soon as you feel, the slightest thing, and when we got tests, obviously when we got tests, that'll be so much easier, of course. But in the meantime, you've got that 2-day when before you've got it, that you could be passing it on. And to be honest, I'm surprised they haven't put, particularly for the checkouts, they haven't got screens, just a perspex screen, almost, or able to turn them into self checkouts. You're asking a hell of a lot all at once, aren't you? Gary Welsh says if everyone wore crash helmets, it would stop them from touching their faces. That's very true. Quite expensive though to buy, but if it's going to save your life, you're going to buy them, aren't you? Your hands are constantly on your face, Richard. They are. They're constantly here. I mean, I touch my head. Oh, it's so reassuring to do this. And with my eye, I'm constantly adjusting my eye. I'm very tactile on myself. And in the supermarket, I'm very, at the moment, I can go in there and think, mustn't touch myself. But as this goes on, you're going to relax, aren't you? And you'll be on the hands on the trolley, and then because we do this without thinking, and it's very difficult to focus one's mind on exactly what you do. Kim says, just been told by a friend in Scotland they're being inundated by people from all over Europe. So much for local NHS can't cope. Small shops stripped. Yes, it is only going to get worse. Ian Burrow says, Boris says 12 weeks in isolation not possible, but we don't go every day. We just go twice a week. Ron Langley says, how is it Italy and Spain are doing with people? How are they doing with people? Are people pulling their hair out there? They seem to have more deaths. They've locked them all up, but they seem to be having plenty of deaths. So it doesn't seem to actually work by locking people up. Nigel Sadler says, during the Black Death, whole communities would isolate. Provisions were brought in from outside and left in an agreed space where money would be left in a bucket of water to try and reduce the illness. It's actually quite a sensible thing, isn't it? My dad in Spain, says Ian Beddoes, is 94 soon. He hates being stuck in his house. There will be those that will say, this is not worth it. Being stuck in the house, I would rather get this thing and die than be stuck in the house and take the risk. I mean, there's going to be people who will think like that. And ultimately, it's their life. Yes, they would be being selfish because they're putting other people's lives at risk. I get that. But ultimately, it is their life. And how do you police it? We can advise. We can try and tell people. We can shame people. But 100% of the people are not going to 100% comply. That's just a fact, isn't it? Ringer Ollie says, I think media have completely blown the situation overboard. Some, if it is probably true, but I think a great deal of scaremongering. Well, that's a very interesting perspective. You're a young man who is probably in the bracket least likely to be affected by it, unless you have an underlying health thing, as a lot of young... I mean, one of the things that I think was a mistake has been telling everybody that young people are not going to be affected by it, and that it's an old person's virus. Because I think there's an element, and forgive me for saying this, but I think there's an element of the society, young people's society, who will think, well, they've lived their lives, you know, it will get rid of the population, they're all dependent anyway, you know, what do we need them for, etc. And I apologise for saying that's not my view, but I think that there is a portion of the population who possibly would think like that. And I think that they're the ones, and sadly, they're the ones, of course, that are going to be okay, mostly. Now, they're the ones that we should be conscripting to work in the shops. We should be conscripting those, making incentives somehow to the ones that are going to be just with the sniffles, to do the most difficult work or the most exposed work, if there was a way. It's trying to bring them on board. And I think in our modern day society, we've let people become incredibly selfish and incredibly entitled, so that people have lost that community spirit. Maybe at the end of this, the community spirit and working for society and as a group and looking after each other will come back. But at the moment, I think we're seeing people still believing that it's still a free-for-all and everyone for themselves. Now, picture yourself in lockdown, in a situation where you've been told by a police actually patrolling the street and telling you to stay indoors, and then the whole ground begins to rumble. Can you imagine the panic and the scare that must put you under? Well, that's what happened to Andrew Norris, one of our legendary viewers and contributors to this show. And we have an exclusive. Andrew not only suffered it, but he went out and filmed the aftermath and all about it. And he sent the video to us to watch tonight. So hold your comments for a moment. And I'm going to get you to just... Hang on. Every time, I don't understand it. It switches into the... Every time it switches into that, there's like the glitch there, and I don't know how to stop that. I just got to set... Oh, for goodness sake. Sorry. Got to set up the video. Right, let me come out of that. That doesn't... Right, okay, I've got it now. I need to work on this. There's something in my little setup here that I haven't quite got 100% slick. Anyway, never mind all that. Sorry about that. Mostly, we try to get it all nice and slick. So, picture yourself in a difficult situation, and then something else rather frightening happens. This is what happened to Andrew earlier today, but we go back to Saturday to begin with.
Hello, Vobes. We are certainly living through interesting times. There was a police car which came along this road here just now. But it's a very strange atmosphere in the air here. Very few people around, but the government, all credit to them really, they have been pretty vigilant, and they are shutting down the transport system between cities. Only internal transport is operating at the moment, and I think now in the next day or so I will head off to the country, because it seems to be the safest place to be. Morning everyone, it's Sunday the 22nd of March, and there are lots of people outside. You're probably wondering why everyone is outside. Well, bizarrely enough, we had an earthquake about 15 minutes ago. Shook the whole building. Everybody's out, and we should all be in. We're back, we're still outside, still walking around like zombies, and we just felt another aftershock, milder than the original one. but still, it's pretty scary to feel it underfoot. Okay, we're taking refuge in my studio to have our morning coffee. Still a lot of people outside, a lot of activity. Been watching the news. There's been quite a bit of damage in the centre of town, and the top of one of the spires of the cathedral has collapsed. We'll catch up with further reports later in the day. Still very busy.
How about that, ladies and gentlemen? I was absolutely floored when I watched that video the first time when Andrew sent it to me. Thank you so much, and so pleased that you're okay. And so thrilled that you could send in that piece of footage. And yes, Julia's quite right. I've just seen her message there. You looked stunned, terrified. I've never seen you look quite so startled like that before in your videos, and that is a remarkable piece of filming. Yeah, everybody should be inside, yet everybody is outside. And isn't that interesting that you're threatened by something that is palpable, of an earthquake. You can feel it. You may not see it, but you can see the results of it. And you know what to do. You run out into the open, get away from the buildings. And with the coronavirus, you can't see it. And you don't know it's there, and you don't know who's got it. And you don't know where to go. And so we're all being told to do that thing that rabbits do when they're being chased by foxes or stoats, and run into the house and hunker down. Two very different responses to two different terrifying things. It is quite scary. It puts life into perspective. Yeah, we have no control over nature, and that's a very interesting point, actually, that we have no control over nature. And we have blindly gone on thinking that nature is not important, that we've conquered it with our big buildings and our finances and our intensive farming and wiping out the wildlife and that sort of thing. And then something as tiny as a virus can come along and scare us witless. It is quite frightening. I have an itchy nose, so I'm just going to scratch my nose, but I don't want you to see me scratch my nose. This is the setup. Oh, no, you can't see that. Hang on, I've got to get back to the studio. This is the setup in the studio, just so that you know, whilst I scratch my nose. There we are. You can't see me, luckily. Pulling out bogies. You know, it's like, I just had to do it. I just had to tear it away. It's that idea that, you know, when you can't touch yourself, you're like, I gotta go and get in there and squeak it all out. Ugh. It's 8 minutes to 9. Now I have a quandary. And this has been on my mind a lot. You know, we see all this, people have been out and about. Julia and I have got this trip. We're supposedly going tomorrow, staying in an Airbnb. It's a complete building separate from anybody else. And the idea was, even before the coronavirus was really anything to worry about, was to walk ancient tracks, pathways, countryside, where nobody will be, or where we think nobody will be. You know, in an ordinary everyday world, nobody is walking the footpaths in any great numbers. And then reading your comments about how things are, and you know, you started to think, should we go? Should we go? Driving on the roads when there's idiots driving everywhere, of course, is a concern. Filling up with petrol, we can pay by card and try and touch as little and use a wipe and wash our hands, that sort of thing. We can do that. The bed and breakfast will be clean. I did actually get a text. I don't know whether the text was from the Airbnb. I need to read that to see whether they've cancelled us or not. And then you see, the trip isn't so much just to get away. That's not the purpose of it. I make videos about the countryside. If people, here's my rationale. People are stuck on the inside, locked up, can't go out. Some vulnerable people can't go out. Many people do like having the countryside brought to them. I can't claim that this is essential work. Of course, there's lots of videos. People can go back and look at my videos, but many people have. And maybe there's a million different videos on YouTube, so you can't say it's essential. But it is a service of a sort. And I know some people say, well, but you could be putting other people at risk, even if you don't consider putting yourself at risk. And the point of the thing is to go and try and get as many videos in a different area, because I've done this area so much, within a day. It's like 2 or 3 videos in a day, and over 2 nights, 3 days. So you come back with a lot more. So so I don't have to go out quite as often. When I come back here, it's like, well, where do you go that I haven't done before and make interesting? So the thing is, one can go one day and immediately come home if we didn't feel safe. So and I know there's going to be a backlash from some people. We've already had a backlash from some people accusing us for being irresponsible for going. But it's trying to sort of bring people something other than just this. What we've had tonight is fascinating and very good. But hasn't it been scary? Hasn't it? I mean, if all we do is sit and talk about this issue, which is what we're doing because it's important, and we're all scared and we're all worried and we're hearing all the terrible stories. But if that's all that we're digesting, that's going to kill us, and it's going to drive us mad. And we do need something different. And I know that television production companies are unable to make new stuff with crews and actors, because you can't have all these people together. So in a way, it is down to the individual YouTube people who know how to film and edit and put things together to give people some content to watch, which isn't all just inside. There's plenty of people doing stuff inside, showing you how to make a piece of jewelry, or doing the ASMDR, whatever it's called, and how to this, that, and the other. But people are going to want to see a bit of the outside world, even if it is a footpath and a bit of rolling hills. So let me just go back and see what the comments are on this. Let's go back and see. Richard keeps saying, picture yourself, and my brain keeps responding, in a boat on a river with tangerine trees and marmalade skies. Yes, Veg Grove said, we had a scare tonight, went to lock up the chickens, and one was missing, spent ages searching with a torch to find her, eventually found her perched on a step by our back door. Well, that was lucky. Good job a fox didn't get it. Puts life into perspective. We have no control over nature. We read that. People make me angry for relatively little things. Nature can stub me out at any moment, yet I cannot be angry with her. That's a strange thought. And we have forgotten we are part of nature. That's true. Graham Whittington says, Richard, I have just shared some images from Zagreb in the Bold Explorer group. Thank you very much for that. Mark says, thanks for the show on a Sunday, Richard. My battery is dying, so I'll have to find my charger. See you all tomorrow night if the show's still on. Unlike if we're away, there won't be a show. So Monday and Tuesday, no show. Should just say that. Monday and Tuesday if we go. I thought you took off on your trip today. No, we're going tomorrow morning. If we go, I'm still sort of in this, should we, shouldn't we, shall we, what will we do? Kim says, they will welcome your business though, if they are self-employed. Yeah, well, that's true. They need the money just as much as anybody else. Ron Langley says, be safe on your travels. Nigel says, okay, run this scenario. What if a lockdown was declared on Tuesday and you were forbidden to return home to Worthing and Lancing? Think about it and discuss. Well, instantly, if there was a lockdown, there would be time for people. They wouldn't, no one, you've got to be reasonable. No one is going, and how would they police it? And besides which, we're only about an hour and a half away in the car. So even if they said there's a lockdown, you've got to be back by a certain time, we could be back. That's not a trouble. And remember, not everybody may well be listening to the news now. People may have got fed up with the news and not be listening to it because it's too awful to listen to. You can't expect people to, hear every broadcast and immediately come back. It would filter through, but you'd have to give people 48 hours or something like that, wouldn't you? Ed Loud says, and hang on, Mike Dixon says, politicians and the media always promote economic growth and increased consumption, but never consider the impact that policy has on the planet. Excuse me, that's a bit of corona. Obviously, that dry cough, that continuous dry cloth, that continuous dry cloth I swallowed. Not very good. Wait till it comes out the other end. Ed Loud says, if you haven't seen all of Richard's videos, I recommend putting them onto the playlist and watching them when stuck indoors. I've been doing that the last few months. Oh my God, you must be sick of me. Absolutely sick of me. I say go. Where we are in the country, it's not at peak phase, unlike London. Yeah, it's 3 days. It's 3 days in the country, where in the middle of nowhere. You're less... Oh, I'm touching my face again. Ian Beddoe says, Nigel, even in Spain and France, English folk have been allowed to drive home. Yeah, there you are, you see. I mean, I think you are putting the SHITS's up people there. A change is as good as a rest, says Mickey. Either... I've lost it. Hang on. Who said that? Good idea, Julia. You don't know who might have stayed at the Airbnb. She's going to wash everything down. Either you or Julia might have it and give it to her son, says David Hawkins. That's true. That's true. What can you do? Let's all step inside a polythene bag and hang ourselves in the wardrobe. Mr. Biggs says, Richard, would you actually class yourself as a key worker in these times? No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't class myself. As I said, I don't think what I'm doing is essential. I think the potential of bringing some people some entertainment and outside. I mean, I did think I could just take my camera, this is a webcam, but go to different places, set it up and record half an hour of countryside. Just the sounds, the birds and this, that, without doing any more than that. You could go and collect, if I had enough batteries, you could just collect bits of atmosphere so that people can put them on, by a pond, see all the crane flies and the dragonflies and, the odd birds coming down, and just 30 minutes of this, go somewhere else, 30 minutes of that, not even do the hello, I'm Richard Vobes, a board explorer, walking along. You could just gather atmosphere in different places, perhaps do a couple of bits to camera where you say, this is the situation here, we're doing this. So people like different things. There's lots of different things, but it's embarrassing to say I was a key worker or anything. What I'm doing is providing some entertainment, hopefully, but it's not necessary. You can do without me. You can't do without food. Julie says, I'm sure you're both going to be sensible and taking precautions. Philip says, hope the weather stays good for your trip. Apparently it is actually going to be quite nice. Convert some more of the colour purple, Julia. The key guidance, says Julia, that was an interesting point, from the government is essential to limit physical interaction, not to stop people going out, but of course, and cause people panic and dash out into well-known spots. Yes. Sorry, that sounds a bit dodgy. Take precautions. Yes. See what you did there? Yeah. Well, a lot of people think that anyway. So we've got over that that thing that people think. Linda Kane says, I would say yes, doing social distance thing. If you and Julia are in agreement, retransferring virus between yourselves and or Joseph. We may well have done it before now. You know, we've been working together now for the last however long. And we bounce off each other very well, so to speak, before you get a bit funny. Yeah, so it's not a point, as she says. Ron Langley, we will enjoy your videos when you come back. Not sick of you, Richard. You've been the highlight of many of my evenings when I was stuck indoors with Grandad. I won't forget that when I get my feet on the ground. Well done, sir. No, well, you know, it's very nice of you to say that. I think if they did, they would have already given it to Joseph by now. Yeah, you know, I don't know what you say to that, but sometimes you've just got to do what you think is right, and it may be wrong. But that's a call we make all the time, isn't it? We don't have hindsight to know if our actions were stupid. We just have to do what we think is right. And I work hard for my channel, and I don't make a lot of money out of it. And it's no skin off my nose to not do it, really, financially. Although I do need the patronage, talking of which. But sometimes you've got to take a bit of a risk, haven't you? And if it brings a smile or a bit of light relief to one or two people, I mean, I would go on my own, but Julia said, "You've booked the bloody room now, or the barn it is. You've booked the place. If you're going, I'm coming." And I said, "Look, maybe you should stay." I rang her up earlier today and said, maybe we should cancel it. Maybe I should go on my own. She said, "No. If you're going, I'm there. I'm supporting the Bald Explorer. I'm coming." And to be fair, this might be the only 3 days that she gets away from the whole family, because her other son is going to be at home. Her husband's going to be at home. And, you know, she might the only escape before they get home. And I just can't. I mean, I live on my own, apart from Billy and Sharifa, who I see fleetingly. And I just can't imagine the arguments. If my ex-wife and I were going through this with the children, I just can't see how one could cope. I just can't see how people will cope. I really can't. So anyway, so no show tomorrow, probably, and no show Tuesday. But, so that gives me a rest. But when I'm back Wednesday, we're on. We're going to run this show every day, and I will try and make my outdoor videos as often as I can. And if you want to see them, you're very welcome. If you don't, doesn't matter. But, you know, my service is to try and entertain you. I'm sorry I haven't been able to read all the comments in this show. It's been very difficult and very scary, really. And I haven't managed to interject a lot of humour. I hope to do that when I'm back. Thank you to Elaine for her video. And thank you to Andrew Norris for that amazing moment of history there. And thank you to you. And thank you for coming and talking to me and keeping me amused in the evenings and talking this through. It's what we do, and we are good people. So I will go now, and I would, if those of you who get the Naked Englishman podcast, who support me and get the Naked Englishman podcast, I'll try and do one before we go and round up. I will try and keep the Naked Englishman podcast going whilst I'm away, assuming I've got 4G stuff. And I will see you when we're back. God willing, as they say. Take care. Thank you so much. All the best. And goodbye for now. Bye-bye.